issues. I don't know why those two links direct you to a different classroom. I will figure it out today. Can everybody hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, we started today's course at around like 6:50, 15, and I was just wondering why so many people was absent. So obviously there's some of the technical issue. So could anybody tell me that what happened there? Like, how do you get into this room, and what's going on?
Hi, this is Melanie. We were in a different session on the actual Blackboard Collaborate through the website, and then we clicked on the link you provided on the email, and this brought us to a different session.
Oh, okay. So maybe I think the best for us in the future probably. Well, let me figure out during a break today. Is that all right? Let me figure out what happened here. Because I didn't expect the this issue. Sorry about that. So can everybody hear me well right now?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Yeah. So take advantage of the chat room, and maybe if you want to speak out, just speak out anytime. Remember to unmute yourself before speak out. Okay. So I guess I need to start from the beginning. Bear with me for those of you already in the room with me for 20 minutes. So hi everybody. Okay, I'm Jeffrey Kuo, and I'm the instructor for this course in summer session. And I'm the PhD candidate in GW economics. Obviously, this is my first time to run the course online, so very sorry about that. I don't know why the Blackboard will direct you into the different session, but I will try to figure it out tonight. Okay, so here's my information. My campus office is Government Hall 324, so that's at third floor of the Government Hall. But now I don't think it's this information become useless right now. Okay, the best way to reach me is shoot me the email. Okay, so for example, like the issues happened before today, like if you didn't see me, you could just shoot me the email and then let me know that you didn't see me, and I could probably have a better sense that we have the technical difficulties right now. All right, and then a little bit of information of myself. You could go to my website. So everything on the syllabus is hyperlinked. So if you click this one, if you are in the browser environment, you could directly go to my website. So all my information is online, and you could check my CV, you could check my research, you can check my teaching experience. And if you want to contact me, you could just press this and then find my email and shoot me the email. Okay, let's go back to the syllabus again. So office hour will be held for this class will be held on Thursday afternoon. So 4 to 6 will be the regular office hour, but you could still make appointment with me by the email. Okay, so if you click the link on the syllabus here, and this will direct you to the Cisco WebEx, my virtual office room. So I will be inside and wait for you to stop by in Thursday afternoon 4 to 6. So any questions or like anything you want to discuss about regarding this course, you are more than welcome. Okay, and then like I said, like it's indicated in the syllabus, this is a whole one semester complete course. So usually Econ 6280 will be run by one regular semester, so which means it's like 14 weeks. So with 14 weeks and the final examination. So the materials will be similar. The level of the difficulty will be similar to the spring and the fall semester. But since this is a summer session, this is a summer course, that means we have to run 2 sessions twice. We have to meet twice a week. So you could imagine that the time you spend on your independent study should be double. Okay, so this is something I would like to let you guys know in the beginning. We will modify a little bit of the course material, but the things we should cover still will be there. Okay, and you could always let me know. You could always shoot me the email. Let me know if you feel you are lag behind a little bit, or like you didn't have so strong background. You could always let me know. All right, and I will leave you to read the course description and the prerequisite here. We only need 1011 and 1012 here. So the basic micro and basic macro. Okay, and our textbooks will be this one. So international economics. So it's authored by 2 well-known international economics scholar, Bob Finstra and Adam Taylor. So I don't mind if you buy the older version, because I feel like the backbone of the textbooks are the same. So since this is the graduate level course, and this book is relatively a little bit intro, a survey level of this field. So only about like 50% the class material will coming out from this book, and the rest of them will be drawn from the the materials I post on Blackboard. So regularly check the Blackboard will be a very good option for you to keep up with the class. Okay. Until now, any questions so far? Hello, any questions so far?
Questions so far for me.
Yeah, and for people, you are in a class, so yeah, thank you. Who is speaking? Who was speaking? You are. Okay, never mind. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that was me, Audrey.
Okay, Audrey. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. So if you're a little bit shy, don't worry. Take advantage of the chat room. So if you take a look of the environment in the Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, you can see there's a chat room there. So type something and let me know. All right. So when I ask if is there any questions, I kind of expect that there are some of the responses. Right. So if you could tell me that there's no questions or it's all good, or then we could keep moving on. All right. Okay, cool. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Ray. Yep, thank you. Yep, thank you, Peter. All right. Thank you, everyone. So let's move on to the grading. Thank you. Yeah, that's awesome, because it seems to me it seems to me in the beginning that I'm just talking to my computer, and that's really weird. Like I don't want to force everybody to turn on your camera or mic during the whole sessions, because like I know some people might prefer you don't want to turn on your mic or turn on your camera, but just give me a little bit sense of you are still in this class. It's very important for me as being an instructor. Okay, so let's move on to the grading. So this course, generally speaking, we could separate this course into two parts. So one is international trade and one is international finance. And this is the convention of international economics. In economics, if you talk about international economics, usually people will refer to it as two subfields. So the trade is one of the subfield, and finance will be another subfield. And like this is a little bit confusing, but some people refer international finance right now as open market economics. So if you see this term or hear this term, that refers to the old version of the international finance. So this is the subfield in economics that we discuss how to determine the exchange rate, what the market of the exchange rate looks like, what is the meaning of the new Keynesian model works in the exchange rate model, and what's the FDI, what's the maybe you heard about the seven puzzle raised by the Dr. Obstfield, or some of the important work authored by Paul Krugman contribute to this subfields a lot, and we will talk about it in the second half of this course. Okay, and two different subfields, and either of them will have one homework and one midterm. So the first 6 courses, the first three weeks of this class, we will concentrate on the international trade, and the last 3 weeks, the last 6 courses of this lecture, we will have concentrate on international finance. So in both of the part, you need to finish your homework and turn it on time, and then we will have a take-home exam in either part. And in addition, we will have another assignment. It's called policy brief, and we will talk about it later on. So as I said, homework, it's a rolling basis, so it won't due until the midterm week. So that means you will have like 3 weeks to finish it, but the questions will be updated every time after the lecture. So I need to see like what's my progress on lecturing and give you the corresponding questions. All right. So that's the homework. And in average, in my plan right now, I think like one lecture I will have like in average 2 questions. So if you count all the courses, if you take a look at the course schedule, you could expect that you are going to have around 10 questions, and that's due before the midterm. And the assignment section I already posted on the Blackboard. You could go check it at your convenience. Yeah, Peter, go ahead.
Is that something that we can like log in and work on little by little each week, or that's something that we'll do all in one shot?
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. So what I mean is that's something you could do little by little. So every lecture, I will give you 2 questions. So 2 questions you could do at the weekend or between the courses, and doesn't matter. But those 2, your answer of those 2 questions won't be collected until the midterm week. Is that clear?
Gotcha. Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. Yep. Yeah, Jacob.
Professor, I have another question. Could you just explain the grading for the homework? Because I was reading on the on Blackboard how you grade, but I wasn't exactly sure what you meant as far as, the amount. I think it was like out of all the totaled homeworks, how much, the best score I get counts for the entire homework. That seems how I.
Okay. So what I mean by you could submit earlier is if you finish it, for example, today, after today's lecture, you should see 2 questions. after today's lecture. I will post it maybe at 9 o'clock today. And then if you finish it earlier and you want to submit it to see if your answer is correct, you could submit it earlier. That's what I mean. And I will give you some of the feedback, and maybe give you some of the like points to your questions. Like this one, for example, this one you get 80%, and this one you get 70%, and which way you could polish out your answer, and then you could resubmit it and let me know another time. So all the submission, it's rolling basis. Like I said, the only thing matter is the final due day, which is the midterm week. That's it. Is that clear?
Clear. Thank you.
Sure. Boycott.
Yeah, I wondered, I mean, I guess we'll have to see what kind of questions are those first, but then I wondered, is there a particular word count, or is it just something that could be like a 3-word answer, or do we actually write out about a topic?
Well, so it all depends on the question, right? So it probably will depends on the level of the difficulties of each lecture. So that will varies a little bit. It won't have the word count. I mean, if you try to answer it as complete as possible, that's good for your learning outcome. But like this course will have some of the calculation as well. So if it's a mathematical questions, the word counts probably it's not so like it shouldn't be a restriction for you, right? So I can't answer you right now because I haven't decided how what question are going to be posted after today, but you could get a sense of it after today's lecture. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you. Got it.
Yep. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, so it's good for everybody to speak out and then ask me some of the questions. Don't hesitate to interrupt me if you have some of the questions. All right? Because grading is important. I know you are in a very good school and everybody are supposed to be very smart. And of course, the grading is something you need to pay attention to. And if you have any questions, want to get clarification, please just shout it out. Don't be shy. All right. And for the exam, it's the take-home format. So take-home formats, I have to say something right now. So take-home exam means you could only discuss the questions with me. You cannot discuss the question on the exam with anybody else outside except for me. So you cannot talk to your classmate. Of course, you cannot to collaborate with each other. So that will be against the academic integrity rules of the GW. If you are shown or you are proof that some of the answer are not generated by yourself. All right, so take exam, you will have 72 hours, I believe I said so on the syllabus. So that means it's 3 days. So I tend to give you right now from in my mind right now, I plan to give you plan to post the exam on Thursday night. So like Thursday midnight. So you will have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to finish your take-home exam. And this in each part will count as 25% of your total grade. So most of your final letter grade will be driven by this part a lot, of course. So you need to study more. In terms of the format of the exam, I haven't really decided yet. It depends on what is the interaction between us during the lecture. Okay, it might be multiple choice. It might be multiple choice partially, but multiple choice probably will only count for like 20% or maximum like 30%, and the rest of the question will be the short answer or the calculation question. But everything online will be covered in the class, so you won't need to worry about anything I didn't cover. Okay, and midterm and final dates is on the schedule, so you can go check by yourself. And the last part of the student's responsibility for this course is called policy brief. So this is like a short essay, but I want to emphasize here that this report, the goal of this report is try to train you think as an economist. As if you go to find a job, well, maybe somebody stopped right now is an economist in international organization or any government agencies right now. A lot of the time, people would expect the economist to summarize summarize something that people don't understand. So to apply what you learned in this class to something that people don't understand, it's an important skill for you in in work environment. And although I didn't have any experience, work as an economist outside of a GW right now, but that's basically what I heard from the senior students I have ever met. So you need to concise your thinking and to put them into 2 pages report. And some of the instruction I already posted on the Blackboard. You can go check it. If you really don't have the idea, you could follow the step I posted on the assignment part, and maybe stop by this hour so that we could talk a little bit of it. But keep that in mind. This is not asking you to write a very long and length paper or like a very complete report. This is just give you a sense to train yourself, to put yourself into an economist's shoes. Hopefully that will be very helpful in the future for you. All right. So this is the course schedule, and I already highlighted some of the important deadline here. So like I said, the lecture number 6 will be the midterm, and policy brief due, it's on August 3rd, and final it's on August 6th to 9th. Okay. I guess that's all for the syllabus. Yeah, any questions? If you want to have a question, you could just raise your hand or just let me know. If not, that's okay. If not, good for now. Okay, thank you, thank you, Peter. Thank you. Okay, so to start with this course, let me briefly introduce of myself more. So I would like to just know a little bit of everybody's background, if that is possible. So can everybody see the slides here? Oh, hold on. Okay, yep, great, great. Okay, so let me start with myself, all right? So I'm Jeffrey Cole, and quick bio for me, I'm the economic PhD candidate at GW, and I was originally from Taiwan. I moved to Syracuse, upstate New York in 2014. Is there anybody from upstate New York? Or, oh, cool, yeah. Who's speaking right now?
Oh, that's Pete Dillon.
Hi, Pete. Albany. Yeah, I've been there like a couple times. I have a friend live there. Yeah. So I live in upstate New York for 2.5 years, and then I moved down to DC 2016. Okay, and some like interesting fact for me, like I have a very tiny fractional Dutch descent. My grandmother once told me that his grandfather was from Netherlands. So, but unfortunately, I can't speak any Dutch, and neither my grandmother could. And I was a military officer in Taiwan Army, and I like to watch baseball and jog. That's my main hobby. So, if this is not so awkward, I would like you guys to
more about economics.
Okay, great, thank you. And Emily Love. Emily, are you here? Okay. And I guess that's all I have. Thank you all for your great introduction. Like I counted like everybody's like originality. Seems like we have a very good variety in terms of the countries. Like we have the domestic students from Michigan, from upstate New York, from Pennsylvania, from California. And then we also have some of the students from China and from Europe as well, and also from South Africa. So it's great. So why don't we take a little bit of the take 5 minutes of the break so that I could pull up my slides, and then if you have any question, you could talk to me right now. So, and then we will move forward to the official lecture for today. And the class will be ended at the time that show on the syllabus, so that will be like 8:30. So I will see you back here in 5 minutes, and I will start the first first lecture notes at 7:16. All right. And can everybody see the slides?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so shall we? Okay, so what is the big questions that we are going to talk about today? So of course we are starting from the trade part, right? So the questions we are like to answer today, if you take a look of any international trade or international economic textbook, they always begin with these 3 questions. The first one is, of course, you need to know what region of the world trade what region in the world have the largest amount of the trade, and what regions in the world has the least amount of the trade value. And like thanks to the technology and all the data that we have right now, we actually has a lot of the international organization or government agencies help us to collect the data of the trade. So if you go to the World Bank's website or go to the INF website, and you could see that they publish the monthly trade data within across their member countries regularly. So we will take a look of the world trade map later on today to tell you like which part of the world right now have the largest amount of the trade and which part have the least. And secondly, the second important question that we would like to know is how does the international trade today different from the past? Okay, so if you take a look of the historical data or the time series data that we call in econometrics, you could see that the trade value in the world, it's not always consistently large, or it's not always consistently low, and there might be some of the issue and cost to it. Maybe it's because the war, maybe it's because some of the political ideology persist in some certain region in some certain time, so that the trade value between a country or between certain country, between a pair of the country, will suddenly decrease. Or on the other hand, if the country join one of the international organization, and that international organization promote the minimum level of the tariff, or encourage the member states to trade with each other, their bilateral trade volume will increase. So this is a little bit of the history. So basically, all the contents that we will have today, we will talk about today, are going to tell you some of the basic terms and concepts in international trade. And last but not the least is the trade. It's not only in goods or services. You can think about that. If you do the business with the person outside of the United States, what kind of the byproduct you will encounter? You will need to hire someone who can speak other languages, and maybe this one is not from the United States. For example, if you want to set up a company in Japan, you want to set up a company in Korea, you might need one of the person who know Japanese, one of the person who know Korean, so that you could communicate with your customers or your customers or your employees there. And this is one of the, I call, byproducts of the trade, but it's actually one of the consequences of the trade as well. Because in the global economics in current days, it is inevitable to have the migration of the people all around the world. So this is the second part of the trade part that we are going to focus on. It's how trade actually promote the migration of the workers, and how trade actually promote the money migration across the country. All right. So we will study the trade in goods and services, and we would like to know what the trade looks like and what kind of the products of the country trade, and who will be the country or to be the firms to trade the product. And most importantly, we have to determine at what quantity and what price they are traded. So the last part of today's lecture is called the modern trade model. Some of you might already learn of it. It's called the gravity model. So this is a modern method for the economists to decide what is the trade value between two countries in some certain industry, and what are the benefit and then costs of the trade will be the another important points here. And we will also learn about some of the policy. For example, what is the most hardest issue on the trade now? Under Trump administration, we know that the trade war between U.S. and China has taken a lot of the attention, in our war, right? So what does the exactly mean of the trade war? You see from the news, trade war means one of the country impose a higher level of the tariff so that the goods import from the other country will have to charge a higher level of the price when it come into the domestic market, right? So this is using the tariff or using quota as a policy. It's actually a way to affect the market. Sometimes economists will say the market is distorted because of the policy. So policy will be an intervention of the market, and this is something very important in the in this field in a trade. Okay, so the basic concept, an export is a product sold from one country to another. So here, whenever you talk about the export or import, you have to make sure, firstly, you have to make sure that which country you are in right now. Who is your subject? Or who is yours? Which country is your subject country right now? So throughout all the chapters in Finchra and Taylor book, here we usually call domestic as a U.S. market, and outside of the U.S. market called foreign market. So we are from the Americans' point of view. On the other hand, an import is a product bought by one country from another. So from the point of view of the United States citizen, what is the export? The export means it's the services or the goods produced in the United States and sell to the outside of the United States. Okay? And import is just another way around. Import means the goods or the services produced by outside of the United States people and then was bought by US citizen. Okay, so this is important. You have to know what is the subject you are talking about. Otherwise, it's really confusing sometimes. Okay, and another term is called trade balance. And trade balance for one of the country is just equal to the export value minus the import value. So according to, based on this, in addition on this term, trade balance, we have two more terms that you usually will hear from the news or from some of the articles or from the newspaper. What is the meaning of the trade surplus? If a country runs a trade surplus, means what? Means this country exports more than the import. So the export value, the total value of the export goods is larger than the import value of the total value of the exporting goods is larger than the total value of the importing goods. So for example, most of the Asian countries run a trade surplus, Japan, Korea, China, simply because if we look at the statistics published by their government, we could see that the value of the exporting it's mostly larger than the value of the importing goods. On the other hand, in North America and in some of the well-developed European countries, they run trade deficit. And trade deficits, by its definition, means what? Trade deficit means if the country imports more than exports. So export minus import is smaller than zero, or import minus export is larger than zero. We call the country run into a trade deficit. Okay, so let me pause on a little bit and ask you, do these two terms actually represent negative or positive? a trade surplus is always good for a country, or trade deficit means that's a bad thing for a country? If anybody want to take this question. Jacob, go ahead.
I think in terms of bad and good and negative and positive, I don't think it's correct to look at it that way. I think you have to look at what is being traded, and if it's just a benefit of either the importing or the exporting nation. So, like in the United States, it benefits the United States, I think, in some regard, to have a trade deficit because we are producing, technologies and whatnot, versus China, who is more like we call them like a developing nation, maybe, but they're actually manufacturing, and the United States doesn't need to do that anymore in some regard. It's more beneficial for them, comparative advantage to China.
Right. This is actually the answer I'm looking for. Like if you only take a look at the statistics, so you always have a positive and negative, right? So trade surplus just means that your export is larger than the import. That's it. So what else do we know if we know the countries runs a trade surplus? We didn't know anything. We didn't know what kind of goods they are exporting out and what kind of good they are importing in. Nor do we know what kind of the technology or human capitals they put in production. So if you only using the term, so just judge it by the cover, that trade deficit is a bad thing for a country, that's not 100% correct. If you think about it, like it's Peter, right? Peter, you said you export a lot of the low value added goods outside of to another country, but you imported a lot of high value added goods from the other country. Is that beneficial to your domestic market? Not necessary, right? Because you are doing so by taking the low cost of your domestic labor. That's it. So if you have a big chunk of the trade surplus each year, that means what? Means maybe your currency is it's undervalued. Maybe your the premium for your labor, it's undervalued. Maybe it's because your production is not so efficient. So then you might run a lot of the consistent long time trade surplus. So if you take a step back and then think about it, what is the goal for a policymaker? They have to think regarding to this two term. Do they have to pursue the trade surplus as always, or they try to eliminate the trade deficit? I will leave you maybe in the homework or in the discussion. All right, the last turn. Is there any questions? Any questions so far?
Far so good.
Yep, Christy.
I guess my question is sort of on the difference between goods and services and thinking about trade surpluses and trade deficits, in that my understanding is that a lot of the statistics are typically only cover goods, but
exactly.
The global economy is trending towards a knowledge-based economy where services play a more and more important role. So how do we actually even make sure that the statistics represent the actual trade happening?
That's a very good point. So that is exactly another point that people criticize if one of the policymakers, they always pursue the trade surplus, or they always see that trade deficit is a bad thing for a country. As you say right now, I think we could show another table later on. That most of the trade right now are the services. Not most. I mean, maybe half and half are in services. So how do we capture that? For example, if an internet company, they provide services, for example, Netflix, based in California, provide a service worldwide. But how do you calculate their export value? By downloading, by the clicking rates? And this is something that in convention, in traditional statistics, that people didn't consider it. So that is a very good point that you point out. Thank you. Right, and then last term, the important term is called a bilateral trade balance. So bilateral trade balance, it means what? If we say the two countries strike a bilateral trade balance, means the importing value from A to B is exactly equal to the importing value from B to A. So if is that always the case right now in the real world? I don't think so, right? So strike a bilateral trade balance right now is a lot harder in our current world, simply because we are living in a global economy right now, and then we have so many trade partners. Okay, so let's go back to our textbook example. What do you think about the movie film? Do you think movie film should be counted as a traded service or trade in goods? And for example, if the Jurassic World in 2015, is it an import or export? Anybody?
It was stated. I think it was stated as an export. Well, in China, but in the U.S., it is considered imports because they filmed the whole movie in the United States.
Because they filmed the whole movie in the United States.
Yes.
So the first part, I agree with you. Let's take another answer. Okay, so you can just jump in. Chenxing, right? Chenxing, you raise your hand. What do you think?
Well, I just feel like the same thing with her, but I think even I'm not sure if it's right or not, but I just feel like if a movie was filmed in China, but I guess the IP still belong to the U.S. company. So for me personally, I still think it's like an export.
It's the export in the U.S., right? So remember
yeah.
that you're a subjective country right now. You are located in the U.S. So because Universal Film is a company based in United States, right? And if you count the worldwide box office revenue of this movie, they should be the exporting goods of the United States company. What do you think about this? Is the trading service or trading goods?
I think it's a trading good, but it's a intangible good.
Intangible good.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a little bit tricky here. So what textbook tells you is, because all the actors and the directors are from the United States, right? So what they are doing to put together this film, their services, because their ability to act, their ability to direct the film, is considered to be a domestic trade of the U.S. Right? But if I say this is a big if the director of this movie is from outside of the United States, this is considered to be an import services of the United States firm, right? Because you hire somebody outside of the United States to help you to create this movie, so that you import the foreigner's ability, the foreigner's talent to help you to make this movie. All right, so this example just give you I use this movie as an example, just give you a sense that right now, like we said before, it is really hard to distinguish between the trading goods and trading service, because a lot of the goods contains a lot of the production activities. In order to make a movie, you need to have company, of course, and you need to hire a lot of people. And those people, if they are not in the same country, of course you have some of the trading services involved. And right now, Hollywood is like a worldwide entrepreneur. It's like a huge industry. So all the revenue they have, they collect from outside of the United States. It should be considered as exporting goods of the United States. But based on that, should be considered a film should be a exporting goods. Then let's take a look at next one. What about iPhone? It's the same question. It's a trading goods or trading service, and it's an importing goods or the exporting goods. You can raise your hand or you can just jump in. Let me know what you think.
Shouldn't it be like the final product should be an exported good from the United States, but shouldn't like parts of it net out in the sense like you have the chips and other circuits in it that are from Germany and Japan and they're assembled in China. So you have all these like the value added components should net out, but the top is still like on those parts, those might be like imports between those countries or even into the United States, but the final product should be an export of the United States. And so you should have all those value added components that were imports that net out from the top export value. Maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I like your answer. I really like your answer. The net out things, we call it added value, right? So like you said, though all the iPhone was assembled or produced in Chinese factory, but all the parts are coming from everywhere in the world, right? So the value added, I think the books mentioned that the value added in China, it's only about like $8. So that means the production itself in China only count as a services in trade, $8 per cell phone. So some of the research, the author of this book say that some of the research claims that iPhone itself, this product, create a trade deficit of the United States. And the French and Taylor believes that this is not a very correct claims, because as you said, as David said, the final product and the design of the whole iPhone supposed to count as intellectual export of the U.S. company, right? So this is just another example to show you that right now it's really hard to distinguish, even with the import and the export, it's really hard to distinguish a goods, it's an import goods or export goods, because the production process of the goods is so hard to separate. We are living in a global value chain right now. Yeah, Jordan.
Yeah, so just a quick question. Does where it is considered an export have to do with where it's patented? So for example, the iPhone, since it's patented in the US by Apple, and Apple is, the headquarters are located in the US, does that contribute to where you would say it's an export from, regardless of the process of designing and making it?
I'm not sure that the trade value has always depends on the patents, but I guess maybe you are right. So we will talk about this later on, like using a method we call value-added method to estimate the exports and import more accurately.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, but now I think you're right. You can't. So what we see in a book, the original also use this example to show us that some people claims that iPhone itself generate the trade deficit between from in United States to China. And they also believe that this is not true because you should count the whole productivities and technology involved in producing this good. Like you said, the pattern is in California, of course. So should we count whole iPhone as a goods that imported from the coastal city in China to United States? That's a big question mark. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Right, and so this basically gives you the answer, right? So the value added by the Chinese labor is only $8 of the iPhone. Okay, so just let me jump into another questions that we are looking at today. So it's the trade, the world trade pattern. It's different from the past. It's good. The trade pattern now is different from the past. So if we take a look at the diagram here, so the x-axis, the horizontal axis, is the time, right? So each year here, and this means the percentage of the goods, in import. So as you can see, in 1930s, what is the biggest part of the importing goods to the United States? It's the industrial supplies and materials, right? So consumer goods at that time, it's relatively small percent. And food and beverages in 30s have a higher percentage in 1930s. But now, if you take a look at the current state, so they updated the data until 2014. So which part become big? The capital goods, right? So the capital goods imported to the United States become a bigger part. And could anybody tell me, or just give me the example, what's the capital goods? Or what's the definition of the capital good?
So I think in the textbook, the most obvious example were durable goods, things like aircrafts or machinery, cars, computers, things like that. So
capital goods is something you use in production, right? So it's not like the consumer goods. Consumer goods means something you bring your utility directly. That's the definition in economics. Capital goods means this is something profitable if you put this one as a production input later on. So yeah, as Ryan mentioned, that aircraft carrier, right, in the textbooks, and what else? Maybe vehicles could be treated as capital goods. Why? Because if the small firms, they own the aircraft carrier, or firms, they own the vehicle, they own more vehicle, they could engage in more production activities so that they could profit more. And that counts a big percentage of the U.S. import after 1990s. Okay? And what about the export? The export of the U.S. goods, does it change a lot? Relatively, it's not, right? Relatively, import goods changes more than the export goods in the U.S. Well, but maybe not. Maybe it's still the same. Still, they are similar with each other, but once again, the capital goods trade become the biggest part of the export in current days. And why is that? You can see that U.S. has a lot of the car companies or transportation companies or the companies that build a railway or build like a large capital goods. For example, computer could be treated as a, or not could be treated as a capital goods as well. So U.S. as being a big exporting country of the computers, the capital goods become a larger part of export in nowadays. Okay, so the trade pattern is different. So let's take a look of the map of the world trade here. So you see, like each arrow means that country have a trade with another country, and the heavier of the arrow means the value become bigger. So which pair of the country has the highest trade value?
Yep.
If you see it from here, by using the naked eye. Yeah, just look. Yep.
What is it, Europe?
Yeah. So that's exactly right. Right? Europe and America's exports like is 50% of the total trade value. And which part in the world has the lowest value, trade value? So
Australia, New Zealand.
Yes, with the United States, right? So we are under the perspective of the U.S. So can anybody tell me that why Australia and New Zealand, their trade value to the U.S. It's smaller than the other part of the world? Yeah, Chen.
I guess it's because they're too far away from the US. Is that right?
Right, exactly. So geographical barriers means what? The distance between the countries play an important role, right? So as you can see, even though Australia and New Zealand, they should be relatively well-developed countries, they're exporting their trade between their trade with the United States are relatively low. Why? It's because the shipping cost, the shipping cost is too high if you want to export the goods from Australia to US, for example. So distance does play a big part in it. Usually, country will export the goods to their adjacent country first, and then move to the further country if they did well in the did well in their neighbor country. So here are just some of the facts of the U.S. and the European trade. That's all in the books. So summarize it, the biggest part of the world trade flow happened between Europe and US. However, within the Europe, there I shouldn't say domestic trade, but the trade within the Euro is actually very high. And can people think about what is the reason behind it? The reason behind it is because Europe, they have created a very strong union called EU, right? So if you are the member of the EU country, you might have a you have the privilege to have a low tariff for your goods. So that the trade between the European country, the member of the European Union countries, will be very high due to the low tariff. So think about that. What kind of the barriers we already talk about right now? We have tariff, we have the distance, and in a trade model later on in this lecture, we call this one the trade resistance term. So I will type in the chat room, trade resistance. So either tariff imposed by the your trade counterpart, or the quota imposed by your trade counterpart, or the distance could be seen as the trade resistant term. And for the world trade map, let's take a look of the what about the American trade? Trade within America is about 1/3 of the trade within Europe, and about 9% of the world trade. And the vast majority of the trade is within the North American Free Trade Area. Anybody know what's the acronym for this one?
NAFTA.
NAFTA, right? Yeah, it's relatively well cited right now. NAFTA is actually a free trade agreement across 3 countries in North America, which is Canada, United States, and Mexico, right? So once you have the free trade agreement, you should have a larger trade amount of the value. For example, in Europe, in Latin America, there's another one called Mercosur, and in North America, it's called NAFTA. Okay. Trade with Asia, that's some of the facts. I will just move on. So, if we want to know a country's trade dependency, what does it mean? So, we have a different kind of a country in the world today, right? Some of the countries are relatively reliant on their exporting and importing, and some of the countries are not. Can anybody give me the example of a country which is very reliant on the trade? Think about that. Maybe Japan and Singapore will be the answer, right? And how do we measure that? How do we categorize some of the countries are more trade dependent and some of the countries are more trade independent? We need to use this index. It's called trade compared with the GDP, or sometimes it's called trade GDP ratio, or sometimes it's called openness index. So usually we will have trade divided by the GDP value to see if this country is trade dependent. So this is the ranking of the trade ratio. So as you can see, where is the Singapore and Japan rank here? So Singapore is here, right? Singapore, their trade, it's a highly trade dependent country. So the trade GDP ratio in Singapore is actually 117%. Means what? Means their trade value is 1.17 times of their GDP value. So Singapore rely on the trade a lot. And if we take a look at the other country on the other end, United States is here. And the openness index, or the trade GDP ratio, it's 50. What does it mean? It means that only 15% of the GDP in the United States was created by the trade. So US is relatively trade independent country. However, Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, and Hong Kong, Hungary are relatively trade dependent. So if you do your own research in the future, people want to ask you, how do you know this country is relatively trade dependent or this one is relatively trade independent? This is the index you have to look for. And the barrier of the trade. So what is this diagram for? This diagram tells us that this is the time series data of the trade GDP ratio, right? So this index is a dynamic index. Some of the country, for example, the UK was really rely on the trade before 1940s, but now it's not. Relatively speaking, it's not so. It decreased a little bit during this time, and then after it moved on to original level. So it's just telling you that the trade to GDP ratio is a dynamic, it's a dynamic index instead of a statics index. And if you are trade dependent in current time, doesn't mean that you were the trade dependent country in older times. Okay, and there was a trend. I think we will talk about it. What is the time trend of the what is the trade pattern in the world? Why sometimes trade increase? So the biggest issue here will be the World War II and World War II. You can imagine that during the war, have you heard a term called embargo? What does it mean? Or anybody know like which country in the world right now are forbidden to trade with another country? Some of the countries are actually being sanctioned right now. Like Cuba, right? Prohibited to trade, exactly. North Korea, exactly. So during the war, because of a political purpose, some of the country will be outcasted. They are not allowed to trade with the other people, right? So that will be one factor to be a barrier of the trade. And then another factor will be what? Another factor will be the ideology inside of the country. Okay, so here we want to point out historically in the U.S. one act called Smooth Hawley Tariff Act in the United States. And if you Google it or take a look at the books, you could see what this act telling you. This act is actually discourage the import to the United States. And their purpose is what? Their purpose is try to protect their domestic firms. So if we go back to here, that's supposed to be around this area. And what is the result for this kind of the paradigm goes on? That's the Great Recession, because the trade value between countries decreased so much, the protectionism of between the countries increase, and then the production of in each of the country decrease, so that caused the Great Depression. And what's the Great Depression caused to? It caused to another world war, right? So this is just telling you we have some of the times that the trade are actually very prevalent. So, for example, after World War II to current days, we live in a world under the construction, under the structure of the World Trade Organization, or GATT. So we will have the countries, most of the countries are encouraged to trade with each other. You could either import a lot of goods from the other country, or you can export a lot of goods from your own to the other country. This is not always the case. Before the World War II, there's a certain time, and the intermission time between World War I and World War II. There, not only in the United States, in the Europe or in Asia, it's the same too. The government don't want people to sell the goods outside of their country. Neither do they want the other people outside of their country to sell their goods into their domestic market, and that just caused the depression in economy, and that eventually leads to the devastating World War. Right, so this is kind of a cyclical turns, and the trade pattern it's always dynamics. So you can see that the history sometimes repeats itself, right? As an economist, we still believe that if we move on to the second lecture, which is we were going to talk about on Wednesday, we believe that the trade will bring all party participants will better off. All participants of the trade will better off throughout engaging in trade activities. So locking down, you might be able to protect your domestic industry for a short period, but in a long period, it probably will cause a vicious cycle, and then it will cause another big problem in a world economy. So, like I said, in addition to the end of the World War II and a tariff reduction under the General Agreement of Tariff and Trade, improved transportation costs contribute to the growth in trade. Right? So, tariff reduction under the GATT, or General Agreement of Tariff and Trade, improve the growth of the trade. So we are living in the second golden age of the trade right now. The first golden age of the trade is the one before the World War I. The second golden age of the trade is after World War II to current time. And anybody know the history about the GATT 1994? So what's the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade? Right now we call it
WTO.
That's right, yeah. After the Uruguay round, right? So WTO was based on the partial consensus of the GATT, and whole organization still follow the original chapters of the GATT Constitute. All right. So let's move on to the second part of today. We talk about the migrants of the labor, right? The trade in goods and services will cause the migrants in labor. And this is the map, like what we did before, to show you that the migrants of the labor. So the heaviest of the arrow means more people move to that region. So in 2013, 60% of the foreign-born people worldwide are living in the OECD country, while only about 1/4 of the OECD-born people were living in another country. What does it mean? What is the meaning of the OECD country? OECD stand for nobody? OECD is
Professor, economic cooperation and development.
right. So OECD
It's basically just the countries that meet a certain threshold, I think.
That's right. Yeah. So OECD is like a rich country club, right? So what does the first statement mean? The first bullet point points you out what? So people moving from the poor country to the rich country, or people move from the rich country to poor country. Most of the people move from the poor country to the rich country, right? Only about 1/4 of the OECD-born people were living in another country. Means if you are born and raised in the OECD countries, like developed country, you don't want to move. And this is because of what? This is because of the labor migration caused by the international trade, right? What about the foreign direct investment? What does this term mean? FDI. So we talk about the trading goods, trading services. We talk about the migration of the people. The foreign direct investment, you could see that is the trade in money. Okay, it's the trade of the cash flow. So foreign direct investment, sometimes it just refer to one of the firm in one certain country buy or merge another firm in another country. So you provide your cash, you provide your capital to gain the control of the other country's firm. That's called a foreign direct investment. So as you can see, FDI will be another byproduct of the international trade, right? And this is the map showing you that the global economics we have right now, we are living in the global economic war, and we have a lot of the FDI between the countries here. So, okay, so OECD, I give you the hyperlink here. You could go check by yourself. And the majority of the flows of the foreign direct investment occur between the industrial countries. So only most of the trade in capital, trade of the money occur between the industrial country. And the reason is easy to understand, right? The reason is what? The reason is simply because if you are the firm in a well-developed country, you are having a more, you have higher end of the technology, so that your profit, your revenue probably is more. So you will have the extra cash or extra liquidity you could invest to the other world. So if you're in a developing country, for example, the African country, they need a lot of capital to help their infrastructure or their construction. So the FDI, the money will flow into the developing country from the developed country. And one of the example of the one of the category of the horizontal FDI and the vertical FDI, it's here. So you have to know what's the horizontal FDI, what's the vertical FDI. So horizontal means what? Horizontal means it's the cash, it's the capital flow between the developed countries. So sometimes in old literature, in old trade literature or international finance literature, it calls north-north FDI. So north is usually represent a developed country, and south is usually represent a developing country. So the same background, the same economic development of that country, the foreign direct investment between those similar economic development countries are called the horizontal FDI. So I just happen to know, like from my friends, that you know, Aldi and Trader Joe's in the United States actually owned by the same family in Europe. Does anybody know that before?
Yes, Professor. I think it was on Freakonomics, actually.
Okay, cool. Okay. Yeah, so I just know that like few couple days before, yeah. So Aldi was a grocery store, like was headquartered in Europe. It was owned by a family, and then they separate, and then by like Aldi South or Aldi something like that. And then because their management is very well, and then they try to expand their branches to the other countries. And then Aldi West, Trader Joe's in the United States, and Aldi South inherit the original Aldi names. So this is a kind of an example of the horizontal FDI. On the other hand, vertical FDI means what? Means the country, means the firms in one of the country invest another industry. Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Jake, for providing the reference. Yeah. Yeah, but I also have the hyperlink there. You could go take a look and check it. And the vertical FDI means what? Vertical FDI means a firm, he invests he invests another firms in other countries. It's in a different industry. So in old trade literature, sometimes it refers to North South FDI or South North FDI. It's the developed and developing country and developing country and developed country. So usually their products and services are different. So one of the example I can think about is the AMC, the entertainment group in the United States, the theater in the United States. It was acquired by one of the Chinese real estate company called Wanda Group. I think in 2014. So this is a kind of example of the vertical FDI. So in your today's homework, you're going to explain what's the difference between horizontal and vertical FDI. I already told you the answer, right? Okay, so that's basically what I have for the lecture notes number 1. And I think I'm a little bit running out of the time. So let me just move on to the second one to see if we can finish the second one, and then I will move the gravity model on Wednesday night. Is there any questions? Give me a second. Yeah, Boyka, on the presentation has been posted. The slides has been posted. Also for the study guide and the and additional readings. Any questions? All right. Okay, thank you. So let's move on to, I just want to give you a brief idea of what the empirical research right now we have in the trade literature. Okay, so this might be a little bit more like a history class. Well, all class today is more like a history class, but you know, for those of you who are interested in the empirical studies, or you want to write your own paper on the topic of international trade, I think this is something you have to know. Okay, so start from very beginning. We have neoclassical trade theory. So that's the topic we are focusing on in this lecture. So we are going to tell you what is the literature, how does the literature develop from like early 19th century. So the first model that we will study is called Ricardian model. So this model was based on multiple assumptions. So for example, perfect competition world linear production. And then the Ricardian theory, it's very useful. The Ricardian theory brings us one of the most important concepts in international trade, which is comparative advantage. But people started to find out that the trade pattern does not always follow the comparative advantage laws. What's the meaning of the comparative advantage? The comparative advantage in trade means what? Means the country will export the goods that they are good at producing, and the country will import the goods that they are not so good at producing. The concept seems very simple, but the idea behind it is basically the benefit and cost analysis, and we will talk about it more. So Heckscher-Ohlin will be another breakthrough model that play a big role in the neoclassical theory. So as you can see, the neoclassical trade theory, it developed its paradigm. Its paradigm exists for a long while, from like 19th century to 20th century up until current days. And then the Paul Krugman and Elaman Hellman, they developed a model called the preference model. They believe that a trade, the force behind a trade, is not only because of the differences in the production technology, nor is not only because of the endowment differences, like the actual theory proposed. It's because people think that the variety of the goods actually bring them utility. Okay, and we will talk about this a little bit later on in the course. But this shift the paradigm dramatically, because the love of the variety, people didn't think that before. And then up until current days, the current research of the international trade was led by one of a person called Mark Mellett, and he is the scholar in MIT right now, I believe, or Harvard or MIT. So what he proposed is what? All the previous literature that we have in trade field are so lack of the micro foundation. Means what? Means we always look at the trade things, the trade flows between the country. We're using the country level data. We're using the industrial level data. But this is too coarse. We need to finer our data. So what they propose to using the firm level data to look into the bilateral trade between a country. And this is another breakthrough of the trade literature. We will talk about this a little bit later on as well. So, like I said, evidence on the intra-industry trade, the trade between a similar country, was proposed by Paul Krugman, and he got the Nobel Prize because of it, or maybe because one of the reasons he got the Nobel Prize because the new trade theory. And Mellett shows that within industry, the firm heterogeneity, differences between the firms, actually was the force behind the trade. And you know, in order to explore the international trade, you have to use the econometrics method. So we could use structural econometrics method, and these are the papers of Rice and Wallach and what's the mostly harmless econometrics also? Joshua Ingres and Shkov-Pirsky, their book give you some of the idea how do you use the structural method to estimate the general equilibrium model. So let's talk about the future of the empirical trade. So if you want to do your research or write your thesis or dissertation on this part, it's actually a good choice. Because of what? Because the trade theory, international theories are always connected with the another subfield in economics. For example, it's inevitable that you need to have some of the knowledge in labor economics, and so that you could explain more things in the migration of the labor. And if you want to compare the horizontal FDI or vertical FDI, for example, you need to know, you need to have some of the knowledge in developing economics. And of course, if you want to calibrate your model, you need to know some of the macroeconomic things. And like anything in the neoclassical trade theory, microeconomic theory play an important part. So so I'm just telling you that if you want to write a paper in a trade field, it's actually a very good option. Okay, so a little bit preview of the next lecture. So what is the standard assumption of the neoclassical trade theory? So usually we will have an international goods market and domestic factor market. So means what? Means I use the domestic labor or the capital to produce the goods and to sell to the worldwide. And the goods and consumers, they have the identical preference in each of the country, and the model is static. So the central question of the trade should be what? Should be how does the integration of the good market affect the good prices and output? And how do the changing good prices and output in turn affect the factor prices, factor allocation, and welfare? So some of the standard assumption here. The first one is a perfect competition. Anybody could tell me in micro theory what's the salient characteristic of the perfect competition market? Anybody? Yeah, Christy, go ahead.
That there's enough firms in the market providing the product such that no one firm is able to set the market price.
Very good. So there's no markup for firms, right? So firms will price their goods at what level? If you're using a mathematical equation, what's the one equation that you could say in perfect competition market? The price is equal to
Cost.
the cost, right? Yeah, the marginal cost specifically. Right? So P equal to marginal price equal to marginal cost. It's the most important feature in perfect competition market, right? And another assumption in neoclassical trade theory is that constant return to scale. Anybody could tell me that what does this mean? Could someone tell me what this means? Means if you level up your input based on your assumption of your constant returns to scale production function, if you level up your input, and that will give you the same amount of the increase in the output, right? So what exactly does that mean? If your production function is like this, you have two production input. One is labor and one is capital. Y represents your output. So if I level up S level or T level of the labor, T level of the capital, what does the output look like? If I level up the production input, what does the output look like? Should be T. So that's the definition of the constant return scale. So what are the other options we have here? Anybody do you hear about increasing return to scale and decreasing return to scale in microeconomic theory? You should, right? And that is other assumptions that we are going to use in non-neoclassical trade model. Of course, a neoclassical trade model is assume that we are living the no distortion, the perfect ideal world. Means what? There's no tariff, there's no quota, there's no transportation cost. So as you can see, neoclassical trade model will be the first one that we explore. But it's very simple, but it's simple and it's easy to understand. But because it has so many ideal assumptions, so that the result analyzed by the neoclassical trade theory, the tool of the neoclassical trade theory, it's not always fit to the current situation that we see in the world. All right. So I think it's about the time to stop here. So I will pick it up from this slice on Wednesday. Okay? Is there any questions before we end today's session? The slides and the readings will be posted on Blackboard, and I will regularly update in my website, update in my Blackboard, update this course Blackboard. Yeah, and there's one of the discussion session, the foreign things that you could try to get involved of is, basically just type your self-introduction in the discussion session. It's the online one on the Blackboard, so that you can get extra credits. It's a bonus credit for your final grades, and that will be like regularly shows up during the summer. Like I will try to encourage you to participate in some of the discussion. It's not mandatory, but if you do so, I will give you some of the bonus extra credit. All right, so I think that's all for today, and I will pick it up from this page. And please let me know if you have any questions or any concerns to this class. Okay, have a good night. See you on Wednesday. Thank you, everyone.